The numbers are staggering. Why do we keep searching? The answer is simple. You don't leave a fallen American behind. The families deserve an answer. The mission of the Joint POW MIA Accounting Command, or JPAC, is to achieve the fullest possible accounting of all Americans missing as a result of our nation's past conflicts. The 425-person organization, commanded by a flag officer, is a jointly manned unit with hand-picked soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, as well as Department of the Navy civilians with specialized skills. The laboratory portion of JPAC, referred to as the Central Identification Laboratory, or CIL, is the largest forensic skeletal laboratory in the world. JPAC's highest priority is to investigate all leads and tips in the search for any Americans who may still be alive and held against their will. To date, the U.S. government has not found any evidence that there are still American POWs in captivity from past U.S. conflicts. The core of JPAC's day-to-day operations involves searching for Americans who are missing in action but were never brought home. In order to return these missing in action to their families, JPAC follows 3 steps. 1. Analysis of case files and investigation of the suspected site. 2. Excavation of the site and recovery of any remains. And 3. Identification by JPAC's Central Identification Laboratory. Finding, recovering, identifying, and ultimately returning an individual to their family begins with analysis and investigation. JPAC experts begin the search by studying all known information regarding the circumstances of each American MIA loss. Historians and analysts gather information from U.S. veterans, foreign witnesses, archival records, and other sources.
The sources of information and the sources of data that we need to help advance any particular case can include foreign local witnesses near the site where the incident occurred, witnesses who were in the U.S. military or in enemy forces at the time who may have information about the circumstances of that loss, veterans organizations that have collected data about their unit through time, official U.S. Army or U.S. military records about the operations that were ongoing, official histories, but also secondary sources, and sometimes even newspaper or local accounts about what took place.
Analysts then create a case file for each unaccounted for American. This file may include historical records, official correspondence, maps, photographs, daily activity logs, and military, medical, and personnel records of the missing person. These files are continuously updated until an identification is made. Once all available information is studied, a field investigation team deploys to survey potential recovery sites, providing recovery teams with accurate and up-to-date information about a case prior to their arrival.
As the investigation team, we're one of the lead elements in the recovery process. Our job is to go out there before an excavation team and actually find an area or a burial or a crash site through witness interview or site survey that will allow for productive recovery.
During a typical mission, teams interview potential witnesses, conduct on-site reconnaissance, and survey terrain for safety and logistical concerns. They also try to generate new leads that may result in future recoveries. But the main goal of the mission is to obtain enough information to correlate or connect a particular site with an MIA. If enough on-site evidence is found, the sites will be recommended for recovery and excavation, the second phase of returning an individual home. JPAC's recovery missions can last from 35 to 60 days, depending on the location, terrain, and nature of the recovery. A typical recovery team is 10 to 14 personnel. A military officer serves as team leader and is responsible for the safety of the team and logistical details. A forensic anthropologist from JPAC's CIL serves as the recovery leader and is responsible for overseeing the recovery process and all evidence gathering. Other team members include a senior team sergeant, linguist, medic, life support technician, forensic photographer, explosive ordnance disposal technician, and other specialties tailored to the mission, such as divers or mountaineering specialists. At a recovery, the anthropologist directs the excavation, much like a detective oversees a crime scene.
Once the recovery leader has determined what the perimeter of the site is, a site grid is established. So generally we use 4x4 meter grids on a site, and we do a survey, a pedestrian survey of what is across the surface of the site, and we use that as a proxy for what might be under the ground. So areas where we find personal effects or life support are good indicators of where we should start. So once the grid is laid out, we'll initiate excavation, and generally you'll have 1 or 2 Americans excavating and local workers helping out in the bucket line and helping bucket up the dirt, and that is sent to the screening stations where Americans oversee the screening of all of the sediment that is excavated. All wreckage, anything that is recovered from those screens that is not a rock or a stick, will go into a bucket for the recovery leader and then the life support analyst to look at the end of the day.
Recovery sites range in size from a few square meters, such as in individual burials, to areas larger than football fields for aircraft crashes. To help with the massive soil removal effort, JPAC may hire anywhere from a few to over 100 local workers. Investigative and recovery missions in search of missing Americans take JPAC personnel to remote and often dangerous locations all over the globe. JPAC routinely carries out negotiations and talks with foreign governments to ensure safe and successful missions wherever JPAC deploys throughout the world, from 16,000-foot mountaintops in the Himalayas to underwater sites such as Lake Tunis and off the coast of Palau.
This is the largest skeletal identification laboratory in the world. The scientific staff is composed of about 50 people. 30 of those are forensic anthropologists that are dual-hatted for both their work in the laboratory as well as doing the recoveries in the field. We've got 3 forensic odontologists or forensic dentists. We've got 9 aircraft wreckage specialists, and then various support people as well.
When remains come into the lab, they are assigned to a forensic anthropologist for analysis, and that anthropologist works what we call in the blind, which means they don't know who the individual is. And we do that to attempt to eliminate any bias from their analysis. So in creating their biological profile, they determine what the sex, age, race, and stature of the individual are. In addition, they look for any indications of trauma or illness, which may help us determine who the individual is.
Any dental remains are examined by a forensic odontologist. Teeth are extremely important because an individual's dental record is often the best means of ID. Aircraft pieces, weapons, uniform items, and personal effects gathered from the site also provide important clues. Once the identification process is complete, any personal items such as watches, wedding rings, medals, wallets, letters, or photographs are returned to the family. In about 70% of all cases, the final step in the identification process is DNA analysis.
We're using what's called mitochondrial DNA. There's 2 types of DNA in the body. There's the nuclear DNA, which is what you hear about a lot on television and read in the news. But then there's mitochondrial DNA. And what's interesting about it is it's inherited just from the mother, which means that everybody has the mitochondrial DNA that they got from their mother. It's unlike the nuclear DNA, which is from both parents. That means that there are a lot of maternal relatives out there that have the same mitochondrial DNA sequence, and that's who we can go for to get reference samples.
One of the biggest challenges JPAC faces today is the lack of reference samples from family members of those still unaccounted for. Any person who is a relative of an unaccounted for American is encouraged to contact the MIA's Service Casualty Office to ensure there is a DNA reference sample on file for that service member. JPAC only makes an identification when all available evidence, remains, artifacts, and historical documents point to the same person. The ID process can take anywhere from a few months to several years to complete.
What a lot of people don't realize is there's never a single line of evidence that allows us to make an ID. It is the totality of all these multiple lines of evidence, the dental, the anthropology, the artifact, the aircraft wreckage analysis.
Any unresolved cases are kept open with the hope that new evidence will be found or new technologies will be developed to make a future identification possible. Once an American has been identified, their remains are returned to their family through their respective service casualty office. They are returned home with full military honors and given the respect they earned through service and sacrifice for their country. One more family has answers. One more American has finally come home.
These are our country's heroes, and I think that they deserve to be home. I think their families deserve to know all they can know about what happened at the time, and they deserve to have them home with them. I think it's a rare thing. You go anywhere around the world and people marvel at the fact that our government does this. So it's very worthwhile.
There's also a sense that this is an ongoing tradition, and this is what this command is about. Is we're going to keep looking no matter how difficult the obstacles are, and we're going to keep trying to puzzle out even those cases that seem like they've sat on the shelf for a very long time.
JPAC is here to bring our fallen servicemen home. I can't think of a more noble mission. I can't think of a more comforting mission to know that if tragedy strikes and I'm lost, that I know somebody's going to come find me and bring me home.
You know, people ask why this is important. It's important because this country sent men in harm's way and made them a promise. And the promise was that they'd be returned. And it's not a promise made by a government, it's a promise made by an individual. Each one of these men was somebody's father, they were somebody's brother, they were somebody's husband. And all of us are those things. We're fathers and husbands and brothers and wives and sisters, and that's who makes the promise. We make the promise to them, one brother to another, one father to another, one husband to another. And it's a promise that we're determined to keep.